What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Another episode of The Bad Batch has just aired, and it is the final episode of the first season, simply titled Kamino Lost. This is the second part of a two-part finale, and I'll go ahead and say right now that I actually liked the first part of the finale more from last week, which was titled Return to Kamino. And yeah, I gotta kind of keep it a little bit hush because there are people in my house who are still sleeping, but I just finished seeing the episode, and yeah, here we are already. I can't believe it's already been 16 weeks of The Bad Batch, and ultimately, I've loved this show. I said it before, but when I was going into this show, I was excited. I was looking forward to it. I love Star Wars. I love Dave Filoni. So they all had my trust on a creative level. But there was this element of like, I'm not super excited for this show in comparison to other shows that are, or movies that are coming out in the Star Wars universe. But after having seen the show, man, what a great time. I loved all the connective tissue that this show has had to Star Wars The Clone Wars, as well as Star Wars Rebels, as well as the various films that it connects to, specifically like the prequels, and with the way that this episode ended, the way it's clearly going to connect to The Mandalorian. So very excited to see where things go moving forward. I think a lot of Star Wars fans who are not watching this are missing out, and that's one thing I gotta say is probably the biggest disappointment I've had with this whole Bad Batch ride, is that doing this series of videos hasn't really done all that great on my channel. And it's just because a lot of people don't really count a lot of animated Star Wars to be real Star Wars. The Mandalorian or something like that will come out and everybody jumps straight on it. Everybody's watching it. Every casual Star Wars fan, every big Star Wars fan, whatever the case may be. But then, with things like the Clone Wars being so popular and people being so excited for it, you would think that things like the Bad Batch would kind of in turn also be really popular, because it's essentially the Clone Wars but just focused on a different set of characters. And yeah, this show is just not one that has been talked about much. People haven't really been checking it out week to week. I know so many Star Wars fans who just haven't been watching this show, and it is really heartbreaking because I think that this is a great show. On an animation level, it's been top notch. The voice work has been amazing. As I said, every single week, Dee Bradley Baker playing all of these clones is just top notch. Really enjoy him in this show. Dave Filoni's vision for this show and these characters has been great. And overall, this has just been another incredible installment into the Disney Star Wars realm. I'm really enjoying what's come out in terms of Star Wars stuff since Disney has purchased Lucasfilm. Of course, people have their criticisms, and as do I. But overall, when I look at the grand scheme of things in terms of content that has come out under Disney and Lucasfilm since the acquisition, I've really had a good time. The video games, the movies, the books, the comic books, it's all been a lot of fun, the shows, and there's so much more greatness to come. So what happens in this episode? Well, at the very end of last week's episode, we saw that the Kaminoan cities, the Kaminoan bases where they were doing the cloning that we had seen in the prequels, specifically in Attack of the Clones, and of course all through the Clone Wars, we saw that it was being completely and utterly destroyed. And most of this episode was just the Bad Batch all working together to escape this peril. They were essentially all going to die and drown, and it's all those characters working together. And even Crosshair has to work alongside the Bad Batch throughout the course of the episode, but he's reluctant. And most of this episode, when it comes to the dialogue, very much is leaning towards Crosshair still being upset with the Batch, and him kind of having made the decision to want to still be with the Empire. He still wants to be a soldier that follows orders. And as Hunter says to him in this episode, you're just essentially a pawn, And so there's a lot of back and forth between the characters, but most of this episode is kind of an escape episode. Most of this episode is kind of a survival episode. But yeah, when it gets to a lot of the dialogue stuff, most of it is really based around the distance that's been built up between Crosshair and the rest of the Batch, and vice versa. And so the episode actually ends with them escaping Kamino. They actually do get back to their ship, the Marauder, and they're about to take off, and Crosshair decides to stay behind. And so he's literally left on a platform in the middle of the ocean on Kamino. Don't really know what his plan is there. Don't know why he didn't at least go with the Batch. I was really hoping after everything, especially with seeing them team up last week, I knew there would probably be some reluctancy in this episode, but to, now be going into season 2 and Crosshair still isn't with the Batch, I think is incredibly sad. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they do with his character and these characters moving forward. I really hope they do come back to being together in the second season. And yeah, it is just kind of a bummer to kind of see Crosshair be completely on the opposite ends of things, even though he has the inhibitor chip taken out of his head already. So yeah, for the most part, I'm going to make this a quick little wrap up. I've really enjoyed this show. Thank you for those of you who have been watching week to week with me and being a part of these videos and commenting your thoughts. I know I had somebody comment on a video last week saying that they've actually really enjoyed this show and got into the show because of my videos. So that's pretty awesome, because ultimately these videos have not done in abundance in terms of views on my channels or comments and stuff. So it is nice to know that some of you have been watching and have been enjoying along with me. And ultimately, I just love Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I love what Dave Filoni and the rest of the cast just gave us with this show. Yeah, final episode, Kamino Lost. Overall, not as emotional or necessarily filled with a great dialogue as a send-off for the show right now as I kind of expected it to be. I think last week's episode, Return to Kamino, was a stronger episode when it comes to dialogue. This one was far more of a survival action-heavy episode, which I still really enjoyed, and those small touching moments definitely still work without a doubt. And yeah, as I mentioned before, the show actually ends, this season actually ends with pretty much setup for The Mandalorian, as we see some of the Kaminoan scientists are being brought to some sort of facility for the Empire, and we are introduced to some sort of individual, some sort of scientist who's in the exact same outfits as Dr. Pershing from The Mandalorian, who's the one that was actually involved with what was going on with Grogu and the cloning there. So it's clear that this is going to tie into seeing what the Empire does with cloning in general. I'm sure they're going to bring Grogu into this in the following seasons. I have to imagine that's where they're going, or they're going to start to set up things like the Snoke clone as well as the clone for the Emperor moving forward. So very much looking forward to seeing what they end up doing with this show and these characters later on, and how they connect it to the other Star Wars properties or the other Star Wars shows. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Sorry if you hear my dog in the background deciding to drink water right when I decide to film, even though he's been lying down the entire time while I was watching the episode. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button, comment your thoughts, subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.